the suspension of disbelief that you need to have in order to really enjoy a fictional work that is,
They're making it too obvious. They're doing a magic trick, but you're seeing through the trick, and you're like,
and you're
you
like,
know.
why is that even there? Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel. This is Jason, and we are back once more on Saturday, not night, not live, to talk about books and stories and the things that we love about them. And we're excited to be here. We hope that you will pull up a chair, grab some coffee. Ooh, coffee. That
Oh, you
sounds
said the magic words.
good. Join us as we ramble. Today, our topic is a fun one, inspired by the book that I just finished reading shortly before we started recording tonight. And just said it wasn't night, and then I said tonight.
That's fine. It's fine.
It's night when we're
It's
recording.
night.
It's day when we release. We get
talked about
confused
this
all the
sometime.
time.
It's night somewhere on planet Earth. We do live on a globe. That happens.
So our topic is suspension of disbelief. And specifically, how do you handle when an author that you love, that you're really enjoying the book that that the story that they're giving you, and then they do something that you just it doesn't quite work. And you're just there going, well,
They've broken
okay.
trust. Yeah.
And you start arguing with the author in your head about what they're telling you that you should be believing, because there's kind of this unspoken agreement, right? When you read a fiction book,
Yeah.
that you want to be able to sink into the world. The author's creating this whole story, this whole world that they're giving to you, and they should be giving you enough for you to be able to understand it and believe it. And then all of a sudden something's just not working. So what do you do? But
I was thinking, like, it's like a rubber sheet, and you put your finger and you push it, and it'll stretch. It'll stretch for a little while. But if that rubber is not very elastic, eventually it's just going to snap. That just hurts you.
it's interesting. But you have a fun fact real quick before we get too far.
The common phrase is willing suspension of disbelief, because as a reader or a viewer of a film or movie or TV show or whatever, you buy in. You have to have the buy-in. It's called willing suspension of disbelief, and I got the quote. It's from the famous author Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He called drama that willing suspension of disbelief for the moment, which constitutes poetic faith. And I like the last bit of that, because faith, it is belief. You are taking a step out. They're asking you to take a step out and go with it. When they start off, for example, when they start off Pirates of the Caribbean, I don't know if they start this off with supernatural stuff in it, but they started off with pirates. So you go, okay, pirates, that's historical. But then the first time they drop a hint of there might be supernatural stuff, you go, oh, what level of supernatural? So then you want to know, is it everything and anything, or is it, more of a folklore type stuff? What is it? So you're letting the scriptwriter define for you those things little by little. If they just take a step too far, you kind of go, okay. You might still be able to have fun with it, but sometimes it's a bridge too far.
Bridge too far.
Mm.
That's a good description. So the book that I was reading, it is the second in a series by Brittany either Fichter or Fichter. I'm not sure. We'll put her name up on the screen so you guys can decide how you want to pronounce that. Second in the book, it's called Wizard's Worth. The first one is A Wizard Awakened. I read the first one. It's been several months ago and had been anxiously awaiting the second one to be released. It just was released a couple of days ago on Kindle Unlimited. Grabbed it up and just very quickly was able to sink in and, enjoy the story for the most part until
Oh, here we go. All right.
and we're going to have spoilers on this. The story is, it's about a wizard, but this is basically a world where the supernatural are it's present day.
Hmm.
The supernatural are among us, but the humans don't know.
Urban fantasy? Is that what
Mhm. Yeah.
I hear that a lot?
It's an
Yeah.
urban fantasy. This author also does a lot of fairy tale retellings, but she has several other. She's got quite a few other different types of genres that she does, but a lot of just fantasy and supernatural, elves, fae, vampires, all of that kind of together. But this series, it is set present day. It's fun. It's clean romance, supernatural. Like I said, the first one, I don't remember having any issues with at all.
You're talking about the
As
internal
far as, yeah, internal
consistency of the
consistency.
rules and things like that. Okay.
hmm So this one, going right along, continuing the story. Basically, just to summarize, the first book we meet are two main characters. Everly and Aiden are the two. And Everly is the child of an elf and a fae, and she is raised her entire life thinking that she basically is a magical dud. And in this world, that can happen sometimes. Basically, the two magics are fighting against each other.
What do they
And
call those in Harry Potter? Not squib.
not
No, a
well, a
squib.
squib is somebody that has
Are
magical
they called
parents that,
squibs? Was that right?
yes, yes.
Because I keep thinking
But
because a
it's
squib
not
is a
quite the
blood
same
pack
thing.
that explodes. In the old movies. Yeah.
No, it's not
Okay.
quite the same
Sorry.
thing, because a squib is someone born to magical parents that has no magical abilities in
She
Harry
thinks she's
Potter.
a squib.
No,
I died. I'm sorry.
no, she has magical abilities, but because she comes from two different species, Fae and Elf,
Right.
she has two types of magic that are fighting, and she ends up not really having control over either one.
Oh, chaos. She's more
So,
chaotic. Like,
yeah, she
yeah.
she tries to use she's kind of a magical dud in that she doesn't have strong abilities at all, because and she can't manage to do anything. Everything manages to kind of just explode, or
Ah,
she doesn't have the finesse that she should have, and she can't use either of the types of magic. And that's the thing. They kind of, in this world, you have different colors or essences that go with each type of magical being, and different abilities that each race kind of has.
okay.
So she's got, like her eyes have the colors of the magic from two different races, but she's not able to really use those effectively.
How about the ears?
Yes.
She has to cover them up.
They wear glamours, so there's a lot
Okay,
of
illusory. Yeah.
mhm, there's a lot of technical stuff that she gives us in this world that, like I said, with the first one, it really does work well. You're brought into this world. It's very believable. It's well explained. All of the things that you would expect of a seasoned author. Like I was saying, Everly is kind of this mix of two species. They think she doesn't really have strong abilities, strong magical abilities, and she's also a princess. They
Of
have
course she
kind of this
is.
hierarchy. Yeah. Yeah. You know, people like having princesses.
Of course, but
And
that's a
her
very well
father
worn trope.
is a highly kind of a elf nobility, but
Nobility.
not actually prince. But her mother is a fae princess. And in this kind of hierarchy, which they're in Vegas, oddly enough, but the High King of the Elves is the one with the most power. The Fae have less power. So even though she's a princess, she's not really in a position to have a lot of power in the kind of hierarchy of the different species and how they work together. The elves have the most power. And the grandson, Aiden, is the grandson of the High King of the Elves. So he's kind of a lot higher up in the hierarchy. Higher in the hierarchy, that's a fun one. Everly's parents kind of have stepped away from their positions and are living in the human world as cops, as detectives, and have kind of rejected their birthright. And Everly doesn't really know why, except for just they kind of are fed up with the politics that are in that system. Aiden's parents also have stepped out of and kind of given up their birthright and their power and position and are working with Everly's parents as cops. Everly finds out in the first book that she is the reason why they kind of stepped out of that world, because she's not just a simple combination of two magics that's not working. She's actually a very rare wizard, which is somebody that's able to access the magic of all of the species, hundreds of different types of magic, and weave them together in this world. So
That's quite a jump. That's something that you might see in the fifth book or something like that. What was the term we used that one time? OP, or overpowered?
but for some reason, she has kind of had her magic suppressed and she doesn't know how to access her magic. And there aren't any other
She's the
wizards.
Avatar.
Yeah, there aren't
From the
any other
Avatar
wizards
story.
that are alive to teach her. They're very, very rare. Well, they actually do have somebody come in that claims to be a wizard, but he's not. He was best friends with the previous wizard, and the wizard died, and he kind of took
Is he a
over
fraud,
his.
or is he kind of
He
he acts like he's better than he is, or
he
he's just doing the best he
decided to
can?
pretend to be his wizard friend after his wizard friend died for money.
Uh, he's gonna get
But
found
kind of
out.
gets, yeah, he gets found out pretty quickly because he doesn't have the ability to use all the different types of magic. So he's pretending, and he gets brought in to be Everly's teacher.
It's like somebody who gets the job, and then you go, and the first thing you do is you go, "How about this?" And they go, "They don't." Well, that was on the resume. That was on
And he's
the
kind of the
job.
Wizard of Oz, right?
Oh, pay no
You know,
attention to the
he's
man
a
behind.
wizard, but he's pretending
He's
to
like,
be a wizard,
pay no attention to, like when
right?
he's doing that thing. Yeah.
So the wizard's brought in. They discover that what she is, there's some curses that have been put by the king of the elves, the Aiden's grandfather, which she finds out is the reason why his parents and her parents all kind of stepped out and tried to raise her. They were protecting her from the High King,
Okay.
who ends up being kind of the big bad of the story, in that he is very manipulative. He does not have a good moral compass. He is willing to use anyone for his own gain and power, but he also is the only one that's really holding the entire supernatural community together. So he is needed,
Right.
but he's not morally good. And so everybody's kind of scared of him, and they don't want him to know that she is a wizard. And there's oracles and there's prophecies and stuff around this all too. So there's a lot of reasons why they've stepped out. Plus, we find out that he put curses on both of his grandsons, which Aiden is the second born, so he's not the one in line for the throne. But
He's the one. He's got a curse on him.
he
Aiden
has a
does.
curse on him,
Yes.
which is very, very important, because his curse is he's cursed not to ever fall in love, or he was told that he can never fall in love, or that is what will actually activate his curse. If he falls in love, he will lose the ability to love, is what his curse does. It basically wraps his heart in stone.
He goes cold.
He goes cold. And so he has been trying his entire life. He takes a vow to protect Everly because she's a wizard, and because it's kind of foretold that whenever a wizard is born, that they're going to be desperately needed. So there's something catastrophic going to be happening, and they know that Everly, she has to survive. She needs to be protected not only from the grandfather, but also because she's going to have this purpose. And we see this kind of threat coming out, which happens in the first book as well, that there's what's called the Pandora key, which is a artifact stone of some kind that's buried in the ground by Vegas, which is why everybody's kind of there, because it amplifies the powers of all the supernaturals around it. And yet, if it's touched, then it can kill whoever touches it.
So be near it, but not too near.
Right. And the king knows about the Pandora stone, and a lot of the heads of the different types of species know about it. They know it's there, but they also are trying to keep it a secret because they don't want people to exploit it. But a group has found out about it and has actually figured out a way to hold it. They've created a device where they can actually wear the stone on them.
I was thinking oven mitts.
Well, yeah, no. If it even
That
like
works
little
for
particles,
pants.
if they inhale it,
Oh.
they'll die. Like it's highly toxic. So, but they've
Magical uranium.
right.
It's that powerful. I have a quick question.
Okay.
So, a lot of series and there's an animation I was thinking about where there's a growth in power. There's a power, the power creeps up. And if they do it too rapidly, it becomes difficult to give them a world ending cataclysm because they just with whatever, and then you have to keep up in the ante. So the fact that they would jump ahead that quickly in the second book, that does seem like that's a challenge, but for a really good writer they could make that work. Does that
Mhm.
is that what broke your
No.
oh
No.
oh do tell.
Like I said, this is a good, skilled writer,
Okay.
which is one of the reasons why when I was kind of struggling with what actually did break my suspension of disbelief, it surprised me so much because she's really good. The world that she's woven is told very well, but it's something that I don't know that everybody would pick up on. It's kind of
Oh,
unique to my experiences, why it bothers me. So
if you read
a
enough
lot of
like you have,
people, yeah,
then you're attuned to this.
a lot of people that read this story are going to be fine. They're going to love it. Right. It's not going to bother them at all. And she's a good enough writer that even though this bothers me, I'm going to read the next book when it comes out. So, and I'll enjoy the story. But I'm having fun with nitpicking a little bit here, which all readers do occasionally, I think. Just enjoy finding a story that they go, well, hey, nitpicking this actually makes me feel really smart.
Have you've heard of the video series called on YouTube perhaps called Cinema Sins, where they'll take a movie and they'll show like the whole movie but like in clips, and then they'll do
Hmm.
a little ding at the top whenever they'll say, yeah, right, if they if they landed they would have broken their spine. So there is something to that, to kind of you feel smart by breaking things down.
Hmm.
So maybe there's something with that in the literary
Oh yeah.
sense.
And people love to write comments and stuff you see on social media all the time. Like I'll be
Or
scrolling
Amazon
on
reviews,
Facebook,
maybe.
or
Yeah.
not so much on Amazon
Or
reviews.
Goodreads. Goodreads.
I feel like
They do that.
Amazon reviews are important enough that people try to be very careful about what they put in those reviews. You don't see a lot of people
Oh,
just spouting
they don't
off
want to
their
lose
little
their
comments.
cred with being a reviewer and
Right.
getting the free books.
Well, that, and a lot of the people that just have random observations, Yeah, like me with this one, it's like I actually really enjoyed this book and this book series, and I think that she's a great writer. I don't want to be discouraging to her.
Right.
And I know that those reviews on Amazon are important. If you just spout off, you can ruin somebody's career. And I'm not going to do that to a good author.
Just so you can feel smarty pants.
Right.
Yeah.
No. And I'm not trying to be malicious about it either.
No, no.
Like the entire point of doing it here is just to, because it's something that's I thought was interesting and I thought that could benefit from a conversation about
Right.
it, and a longer conversation than you can really have in a comment. Yeah. But let me get back to
Here we go. Yeah,
it.
here's the thing.
Okay, so we found out that he's cursed his grandson, the grandfather did, for some reason when he was a
Aiden.
kid,
Right.
right, Aiden,
Okay.
to not be able to fall in love or he will activate his curse, which will cause him to not be able to love. So you can see, like, what point does a grandfather have to do that to a child? Like, I don't know if there was some oracle or something that foretold this, or if he just went, you know what, I want to have control. And
The grandfather could have been hurt
yeah,
by something and said, okay, well, he'll never know the pain that I've known. And so maybe he's thinking he's saving it from. I
we
think
don't know.
I'm doing
We
this
also know that there's a
optimistic. I'm being
curse,
optimistic. Yeah.
right? There's a curse on the oldest grandson too, but we don't know
Oh,
what it is.
okay.
And
Oh,
yeah, I still don't know what it is.
so my
Like
leap in logic
it
is not.
keeps getting kind of referred to. The older grandson has been undercover in this organization that has been kind of they've been trying to find out more about it, the Pandora Key
Mhm.
organization, for the past 5 years. So he's kind of cut contact with his family. He's not greatly featured in these books, but he is there. So anyway,
He may show up in a future book.
at the end of the first book, Aiden, he's been falling in love with Everly for years. He's been there. He took a vow to protect her. He's got to maintain the vicinity with her, but he's been struggling because he knows he can't fall in love with her. So he has been trying
So he's
to
going to look like a
to
guy with
distance
commitment
himself.
issues. I was thinking
Right.
if you didn't know he was supernatural, you'd be like, he's got
She thinks
commitment
he hates
issues.
her for some reason.
Yeah.
But, over the course of the first book, they kind of get closer together, and through all of the stuff, they end up falling in love. She's falling in love with him. She doesn't know about his curse. And yet, when he steps in to save her from his grandfather at the end of the first book, and they've also there's coup attempted by the Pandora's key. They almost succeed. She's able to stop it, but she also is in doing so reveals her powers to the grandfather, and the grandfather tries to kill her. He steps in to save her, and it sets off his curse. So all of a sudden, he can't feel love. And that's where the first book ends. With
So
like,
he's Mr. White Christmas. He's Mr. Snow. He's
and
Mr. 40 Below
they
for the next
both
book.
they both agree to work for the grandfather, for kind of the good of society. Even though she's scared of him, of his power and his manipulation, and she's kind of been warned against him her whole life by her
Keep your
parents.
enemies closer is
Right.
a phrase.
But she knows that in order to have the ability to keep researching and keep finding out more about this threat, because they catch one part of it, but it's a way bigger organization. They know there's more to uncover. And the Pandora key, which I didn't finish explaining why they're a threat. So
Okay.
they've managed to access to be able to wear the power of the stone, which greatly enhances their powers, but they want to take over the world with it. They're trying to take over
Are they going to drop?
all of the
They're going to
supernaturals, and they want to
reveal
enslave.
that the
Yeah,
supernaturals exist.
they're wanting to enslave humanity.
Okay. Are they going to do it in secret, or are they going to say
No.
we exist?
They want to do it. They want to out the supernaturals to the world and enslave
It's
them.
I've heard it called, well, within a certain thing I used to do, they call it the masquerade, where basically there is a pact, a
Mhm.
compact of sorts that you just don't reveal that stuff. Humans are more dangerous than you know. There are weaknesses to the supernaturals and that can be taken advantage of. And there's this tentative give and take relationship
Mhm.
where we keep that secret, and any of those that would break that are greatly taken down a peg. So if you reveal that and there's no side effect, what the side effect would just be that you have a dystopia, or for the supernaturals, a utopia.
So in the second book,
Yeah,
the curse and Aiden's inability to love is the thing that actually that's the thing that got me. It's how he actually handles the sudden inability not to be able to love. And I think, in the first book, just kind of talking about it, it was like, oh, yeah, this is believable within the world. And everybody's reaction to it, his parents are warning him not to become, not to let his inability to love to turn him into a villain. They're all kind of concerned that this is going to give the grandfather more control over him, that he's going to become just like the grandfather, because the grandfather is seems to be purely logic driven, right? But that's the problem to me, because one of the things with autism, and you knew that we were going to get to this,
I
right?
didn't. I'm keep going. Yeah,
One of the things with autism is there really is this almost disconnect in some ways from the ability to feel and understand other people's emotions, right? And it's not an inability to love, obviously, but it's an inability to comprehend what other people there's the empathy, right? Knowing what the other person is thinking, understanding their thought processes. It's the whole autism word. It means is kind of based off of me. The odd is like me. You're me focused, right? And so people with autism, you have to be really, really careful, because there's this tendency for people with autism, if they're not understood and trained and taught, like especially the ones that go undiagnosed, can become very arrogant in the way that they perceive the world. They go, nobody else thinks like me, therefore I'm superior to everyone else, right? And it can either go one of two ways. They can become very arrogant and feel like they are smarter than everyone else, or they can feel like very inadequate and go to the
completely
complete
alone.
other
Maybe you feel like
extreme.
alone.
Right. And feeling like they're broken and that,
Something wrong with them.
right. So, and it's kind of sometimes I think that the supreme arrogance is even kind of a pushback against the tendency to feel like they're broken. They go, well, no, there's nothing wrong with me. It's everyone else.
Yeah,
So it's almost just um, this pushback against that feeling of brokenness. So you have a lot of people that are on the spectrum that can be volatile if they're not helped to process that feeling of just being different, and of their brains just processing data in a different way. And so I say that I want to be very careful with how I say that, because there's that's not an automatic, that's a possibility of some people. But man, autism is complex.
if you've met one autistic person, you've
Yeah.
met one autistic person. There are proclivities, but you can't just say, oh, all autistic people are this way.
And I don't want to paint, I think that a lot of times autistic people sometimes get painted with a pretty ugly brush. And I'm not doing that because my boys are incredible and they have such soft, tender hearts and so much joy and so much happiness. But there's a struggle there too that just sometimes, our oldest is so sure that he understands. And then being told, nope, you're not getting this. You're not understanding the way that you think that you're understanding. Hang on, let's slow down. It can be hard
Yeah.
sometimes for him. I'm speaking from my experiences. If anybody out there, please hear my heart. There's a lot of judgment of parents with kids on the spectrum that the slightest thing that we say can be taken out of context and it can cause hurt. And I'm not trying to do that because there's a whole lot of complexity and a whole lot of beauty that is out there on kid with people, children and adults on the spectrum. And
And just, well, this character, okay, he can't feel love, but what? But that doesn't mean he doesn't feel anything.
and that's the thing. In this book, we very much delve into his mind and into Everly's mind on while he's dealing with this curse. And he is feeling like he's missing a part of himself. He can tell he has the memories of what it felt like to be in love, to react normally. And yet he describes it as he's going along and he sees something and he expects to feel a feeling and then he doesn't. And he feels alone and lost and just,
Numb. That sounds like
yeah.
feeling numb, like you don't feel anything from that.
But to me, it seems like the problem that she's having is that she's describing all of this stuff, but it didn't work because the memory of what and why, what his motivations are and why he should be doing something
Yeah.
should have been a safeguard against him acting in a way, because you kind of see him going down this path of he starts just the ugly things that he says to her and to everyone else. He cuts himself off from his friends, from his family. He agrees to follow down his grandfather's path because for some reason that's the most logical thing, is what we're supposed to believe, that it's logical for him to start acting as if not caring about how many people are going to get killed or hurt, that's a product of him
That's a big
not being
swing.
able to
That's a
love.
big,
Right.
swing from one to
It's
the
like
other.
your conscience is not wrapped up in your ability to feel love because you can still remember what's right and what's wrong.
Yes,
You
and that
remember
people
that,
have a worth, inherent
right.
worth. You can,
And
the,
that's based on logic. And he
yeah,
still has logic. Not being able to feel love, being able to feel, it's like part of that works, just him feeling isolated and alone and stuff. But the swing in his behavior is, it's not right. It doesn't work. It's not logical
it reminds
because,
me of the like you talk about those characters that they are autistic coded in that are villains that have these
mhm,
aspects to them that are autistic coded. Either they're very brilliant and they're so brilliant they can't see
but
the effects of what they're going
not
to do, and
having,
they're very arrogant.
yeah,
And they're not saying they're autistic, but they're coding those things, and so you're kind of like, are what are you trying to say?
but
And
not being able to feel
shows a
love
misunderstanding of
doesn't
that.
mean
Yeah.
that you're evil and that you don't care about human life. All of those things are rooted in logic, in morality, in having all of the things that he was has been taught should still be there. That doesn't mean that he should just throw those out now because somehow they don't make sense. They're not the logical choice. And he should be working off of logic now. You should have a data from Star Trek, right? You should have
He
the
still cares
pure,
about human life and wants to protect those
unemotionless.
things because it, he doesn't have to have emotion
Right.
to
And you
rescue
don't
someone
have
from death.
emotion to know how you should treat a girl that is in love with you. He should still, and that you're still have vowed to protect. And we
There's
have,
a whole episode in Star Trek about this woman who's in love with Data, and everyone tells her, he can't feel those things, but he keeps trying to try to be that for her because he
mhm,
cares. That is so what this feels like.
it's a complete swing too far. It's like
It shows a misunderstanding of how
of how
people's
emotions
emotions.
actually work, that our morality is somehow based on our ability to love people. And that's not true. It doesn't matter what your feelings are. We can operate out of logic, out of an understanding of what is that, because
Or just usefulness. You don't have to love somebody to know that they're important
right,
and need to have the right to
the
live.
most logical thing in the world is that when you treat people with kindness, good things happen.
So
That
you
when
don't even
you,
have to be
right,
super good and moral to make a what is a good and
sometimes,
moral choice.
sometimes, like, you think about Christianity and following God's rules, right?
Hmm.
You don't even have to care about making God happy or pleasing Him to understand that if you do these things, you will have a better outcome for your life. Like there's a logic to it,
Or just society. And
right?
that's one of the proofs that people have given for Christianity is saying, okay, look, there are things in here that are actually, we don't have a purely atheistic society. We have a society that's built off of these principles, and they came from somewhere. They didn't just come out of. Okay, they
Hmm.
came out of a belief in God. It's just that we borrow those things to
Which is why a
live.
lot of people actually dismiss the supernatural in the Bible and say that it's just a logical rule book because it makes so much sense. And so they say, you don't even have to have a God that created everything. And
Deists. It's the
yeah,
deist theory. Thomas Jefferson, I think, was famously a deist.
it misses there. And it's like, it's not even about the world that she's built. It's that she missed what it would be like, just the emotional implications of this curse being enacted on Aiden and how he would react from it. And it felt like I was being pulled along to have to believe that he was doing this just for us to have some tension and the heartache that needed to happen for the story to progress.
We have talked about this before. Me and you, I think, I don't know if we didn't coin this, but we started quoting this. I think when we were
NOP.
yeah, NOP, need of plot or need of drama. I'm gonna put it right here: need of plot, need of drama. And when you do that, it's kind of your, what do they call it? I know that when people within the world of the book or the media, make a comment and go, why does that happen? Oh, well, and they
Mhm.
kind of, it's called lampshade hanging. You hang a lampshade on it. But we're doing that when you watch it and they do that, you kind of say that,
Mhm.
but if they do that way too often, it
It
pulls
pulls
you
you
out.
out. The suspension of disbelief that you need to have in order to really enjoy a fictional work that is,
They're making it too obvious. They're doing a magic trick, but you're seeing through the trick, and you're like,
mhm. And you're
you
like,
know,
why is that even there? And you're like, I mean, I get that it was need a plot, but you don't need to have things in a story that are just for that reason. It needs to make sense. It needs to fit. It needs to flow. And that, like I said, that was what inspired this discussion, was just that I'm reading a book that's really, really well written. And all of a sudden I'm going, but wait, hang on here. And like I said, I could see some of this, and a little bit of it was a little more poignant because of my experiences and my love of people with autism, and knowing that,
the
the way that,
similarities to
yeah,
how
the
Aiden is
way that,
portrayed,
yeah, and it's not a perfect,
1 to 1. Yeah,
correlation,
yeah.
but it there's similarities there of just going that, somebody that is not feeling and understanding this because of empathy, because of that love connection, how others think and how they process, there's still an ability that people with autism have to understand there's rules for how human interactions go, that they're able to function within those rules even if they're not feeling the need to be there, right? That's the connection that I got, was just like, you don't have to be able to have empathy for another person or put yourself in their shoes to know that you don't cross these boundaries, and to be able to actually control your behavior.
I heard a quote from somebody, and I'm not getting that quote exactly right, but hopefully you kind of feel where I'm going with this. Is I don't know what the context was, but this guy said the opposite of love is not hatred. It's not love, and on the other end of the spectrum, it's hatred, or villainy, as you were saying, or that
Hmm.
villainy. It's like disinterest or something. It's like that. It's like a dispassionate. I don't. It's not that you hate someone. To hate someone is a passionate feeling. Love is a passionate feeling. Hatred is too. You are consumed by this emotion. The opposite of love is a unconsumption. You're not consumed by that emotion. It's a disinterest. I think that to put him into to villainy that quickly, I think it. I don't know. That doesn't bode well for where this series is going unless she kind of course
Yeah.
corrects.
Now, like I said, she weaves a good world. I feel like she's able to, even with some of the things that he's doing that don't necessarily make sense, there's a lot of other complexity to her writing, and the story is worth reading, even with my little raised eyebrows at points of it. Like I said, it's a good story and it's so well written. And I wish that she had just changed a
A
little bit.
tweak.
Yeah, just some little tweaks there, some
Or
little,
called you up and asked for your opinion on
yeah.
that. But that seems like a small thing. I honestly, but sometimes it's those small things that, like, oh, like a stone, like a pebble in your shoe. It doesn't have to be a big boulder. It's just something as small as a pebble in your shoe, and it just,
Hmm.
or the pea, Princess and the Pea with the pea in the underneath the mattresses. There are much bigger breaking of disbelief that have happened in fiction that I've watched, and it and it was much more obvious. I think that it's
And
possible that somebody may just kind of not catch, and hopefully they don't catch it.
well, it's kind of like,
But you did.
for an
Sorry, I'm
oyster,
sorry.
you've got that little grain of sand, and I think, most readers are just going to kind of cover it over and build a
And
pearl.
roll out of it.
Yeah. So, and end up with something that's really beautiful, but that was a minor irritation at first, and, just keep going.
That's a good way to put it. Are there there's some fiction though that I they can stretch that willing suspension of disbelief and you go with it and have fun with it. The
Mm-hmm.
director or the genre invites you to have fun with it. I think about not only action movies of the like the pulpy kind of time periods, but the stuff from the 80s, the 80s action movie that's just over the top,
Mm-hmm.
and they will do some things that you just kind of accept that a gun is going to have way more bullets in its magazine, than you expect. If you sit there and count them, oh, they went over 6, and you kind
My
of go
brain
with,
goes to Kill Bill.
oh man,
Like her being able to get out of the coffin where you're just kind of going, do I
yeah.
actually think
Even though her knuckles are bloody,
that
it's just
that
yeah.
this is possible? Like how far she goes and where she comes from to where she ends up at. Do I think
It's
that this
based
is
off of
humanly
70s.
possible?
It's
No,
based off of
but
70s kung fu logic. They even have a little montage scene that explains, because the Pai Mei, the Sifu is telling her, he to put your hand on the wood thing and do the little punch, and she does it, pa pa pa. She does that all the time, and her knuckles are bloody, and she's just crying about it, and just, she can barely pick up her food. So they kind of give that, and because of the style that Kill Bill is done in, it's done in that 70s kind of style. There's a part where Pai Mei jumps up on her blade that she's holding.
mm-hmm.
He can fly. Okay. So see, that's that thing, is those martial arts movies of the 70s. If you have enough training, if you understand your chi, if there's some kind of secret technique that nobody else knew, I mean, that's the technique that
We've
kills
entered
Bill.
the Matrix world. Do you think that's
Oh,
air you're breathing now?
right. But see, that's the thing. When you're in the Matrix world, and you know, as soon as somebody's able to just roll their eyes back in their head and suddenly they know how to pilot a helicopter that they never would have known before, there's a reason given behind that. And so every time you see somebody able to do that, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
aha. So they set some rules, but they
But
break those
that's
rules very
where
easily, but they give a reason why those.
suspension of disbelief is built into it. They know that they're pushing you beyond the realms of possibility, but you're given a logical reason why you should do that.
Well, Neo's ability to suspend his disbelief is actually how he's able
It's
to be the
pivotal.
one. It's
Mm-hmm.
pivotal to the whole story. So that's a good. Those are both really good examples. Plus, the Matrix has within it that 1970s kind of kung fu doing the magical flips. It's got the chi thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all homages to those things. If this was done in a realistic world, she's done. The bride, Beatrix, sorry, whatever her name is, in the coffin, she's not going to be able to get up. She's done. But because we know that those things have been set in place, and there's some scaffolding to this. It didn't just come out of nowhere. He kind of gives you that, and when you give that world and that flavor, oh, I remember the 70s, and I remember that's his favorite time period, the director. So he's going to homage that, and I remember seeing those aspects. So if it came out of nowhere and there wasn't that flavor of the 70s kung fu thing, I'd be like, oh, for real? But but because of that, you go, oh, here we go, and the music starts playing, and you're like, okay. So I think that those, yeah, it's those Jenga blocks. You put those in place, and be careful with the plot holes. Plot holes are, sometimes if they're big enough to drive a truck through, you're in trouble, and they can.
That reminds me of
Okay,
the film counter you were the
cinema sins.
cinema sins,
Yeah, the plot holes.
the Twilight one, where you've got a truck that's actually driving through that has no driver in the front of the truck at the beginning of the first Twilight movie. Like that's one of the cinema sins, is that you have this truck driving by and there's nobody driving the truck.
I see. That's the thing. I didn't catch that. Did you catch that when you saw the actual movie, or
When I saw the movie, I didn't see
when
it,
they did
but
the point, they pointed it
when they
out,
pointed it out, it was
and
like
now
I
you
can't
can't
unsee it.
unsee it. Jinx. That was great.
Yeah. But I mean, there have been some books that I couldn't do like I did this one.
Yeah.
That I couldn't still go, I still enjoy the book because there's so much else that this one thing that's irritating me, I can just kind of gloss over it. And even though I may be sitting there arguing with the author in my head every time that he's doing something that just doesn't make sense within the curse that she's described why he would be acting this way. There's still so much else that's good there. But there are some books that I've read that just didn't have that. And it's like, not only have you broken your contract here with me where you're not working within the confines of your own world,
Yeah.
you just aren't telling a good story. And those are the ones that I will actually give a less than positive review on Amazon and just be like,
I
no, it just wasn't
it has to
told
be really
well.
it has to be really bad for me to pull the ripcord and just go. What
Hmm.
was it? What's the letters abbreviation for did not read or something like that?
Did not finish.
Did not fit
DNF.
DNF.
Hmm.
Oh, you know what? You know what it was? Okay. In a fantasy book, right? You're in a fantasy version of what could be considered Western Europe. You're in a fantasy world, and they used the word. It's all coming back to me. Trebuchet. You know what I told you about this. A trebuchet is a kind of a catapult. And I know that even if they said catapult, I'd be like, eh. But when you say trebuchet, that's so French. I was just like, there is no France in your fantasy world. And it messed with me so much that but the book was decent enough that I went, okay. And you just go, nope, I didn't see it. And you keep moving on. But it's still,
Hmm.
obviously that had an effect on me because it still sticks in my head. And you're supposed to do like the Mystery Science Theater song and repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax. Thank you for that because I keep forgetting and if those things are so if it's a pebble or a boulder in your shoe, you can't continue watching it or doing that. And I haven't had that happen too many times. I think ADD is a big enough obstacle of me to not finish a story. And I feel bad about it after hearing you talk about your stories. I want to go back and read those things, but that's just my
I
little
think
spiel for the episode here.
for me, I didn't used to not finish books. And I think that as I've gotten over the age of 40, I just find myself more and more getting to the point of going, if I'm having to force myself to read this, then
There's
I'm
another good
okay
book you're not
with,
reading.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
okay with putting it down and finding another one that actually sparks my interest. I don't feel the need to force myself to keep going anymore.
And you're so fast that it doesn't even matter. You're just like, I just, blazed onto another one. Zip zap, you know.
Yeah.
That's your
Though
superpower, yeah.
sometimes it does get a little interesting when I can't remember whether I read a book or not.
You do that with movies too. I'm like, oh, hey, did you want to watch this movie? And you said, I don't know if I've seen that before. And then I feel bad because we watched 5 minutes of it. And you're like, oh, I've seen that before. I was like,
One of those
give
that
them a
I
pass.
hate is when you have historical fiction that's actually supposed to be historically accurate, and then they throw in something that's just like, no.
We talked about that with the Little Women movie, and you
Hmm.
said that there was postmodern kind of elements kind of creeping in there. And yeah, that postmodern stuff when it creeps in historical, and I think that they would rather those bad things in the history books not have happened in the first place.
Hmm.
And you're doing it a disservice by saying you're not giving it a thumbs up, saying, "Ah, good
Well,
deal, history." No, we're saying that was bad.
that's one of the problems that people had with the Snow White remake, wasn't it? One of the problems that people
Yeah,
had.
the way that men and women relate, it was more of a 1930s way of looking at relationships. We did talk about that during that episode, I think. Yeah, go check that one out. But yeah, we did talk about those things that kind of ruin it, and I'm kind of nervous
Were
about
they
the Chronicles of Narnia
they're
Netflix
changing
series.
what should or what was set in a historical period that had value system and stuff, and they just kind of throw all of that out in a remake. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, yeah,
From
it's a
some
fictional
commentary on
world,
capitalist,
so
communist,
yeah,
male and female
that one, it
relationships.
is a fictional world. You have some freedom to do that, but it just didn't end up working out for them the way that I think they hoped it would. What if we actually said, we've said suspension of disbelief is necessary, it's fun. It's not fun when the author throws us out of that, but a lot of times you can get over it, sometimes you can't.
You get a do not finish. Did not finish.
Yeah.
You know, the do not finish is actually, I've dealt with that with a series before. I think that there's been some where it's like I had a couple more seasons to go before the show ended, and I was like, no, I'm done. And it could be fatigue, overused things. I mean, it may not be, messing with your suspension of disbelief. May be overused
Mhm.
tropes, and you're like, okay, bring it to an end, and they won't do it because there's too much money in it to keep it going.
But I think that there's a lot of just, there's a lot of, it depends on who it is. There are some people that are going to be immediately just like, nope. There are some people that are willing to go a lot further. And, it's a lot of opinion and just personal discretion. So, I mean, with that, if you've made it this far in this, thank you, first of all.
You
And
did finish.
yeah, but also, I'd love to hear from you guys. I'm interested to see if you're the type of person that actually listens to the end of this rambling stuff. Are you the type of person that will stick with a book that did that to you, that you kind of lost your ability to suspend belief? But
And
did
if
you
you didn't,
finish? Did you not? What did you do?
put in the, maybe put, the best way to get in touch with us is you can put it through in the comments. We'll see them, and we do read them. As you may have noticed, we do read those.
Yeah.
So if you had, what was your breaking points? Give us some examples, whether it's for a movie, TV show, or book. What was your point where the contract between the creator and you just, hey, bridge too far? Well, where was your bridge?
Thank you for joining us in our days.
Ah, days.
With that, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.